Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the monthly What's New in AWS live stream presented by AWS Enterprise Support. I might welcome my colleagues on, Graham and Tom. How you guys going?
Hi, thanks for joining
Hey,
us,
Graham.
everyone.
Hi, how are you,
Hello.
everyone? How's everything?
Hey, Tom. Back at the Hilton, I see.
Yeah, it's unfortunately I have to. People say that my room is so messy, so I have to go back to my
I
mansion.
I don't know who would say that, Tom. I don't know, but
Well,
I'll have to take their
we
word
can
for it.
we can do a retro for that then later on. Yeah,
I've got a
I
really
know.
We
tight camera angle that stops you from seeing the mess that's everywhere else.
Okay, fair call, fair call. Yeah, now,
we have an
yeah,
action-packed show this week, don't we? We got Graham. You got some containers that you're going to dive us into. I'm really looking forward to your section, Tom, on AIML, but with a bit of a
yeah,
twist around
yeah,
trust and safety, which is really exciting.
yeah,
And we might end up finishing on compute and some database releases as well if we've got some time.
yeah. Super exciting topic today. But before my section jump in, I do want to say so that Graham, it's been a while. You disappear and having fun somewhere in the in on the earth or whatever. So
I
would you like to
did.
share one exciting things that you've done in your
I
trip?
did. I was in Switzerland for 5 weeks. I had an absolute blast. I traveled around a lot, based in Zurich, but then also going through the south of Switzerland into northern Italy and southern France. Probably the highlight of the trip for me was mushroom hunting. We found heaps of porcini mushrooms. If you've never had porcini mushrooms before, classic Italian mushroom. First day we found about a kilo, and I made this amazing risotto in the Swiss Alps, in a rustic cottage. It was just perfect. So yeah, magical.
Mushroom
Wow,
risotto, my favorite. It sounds amazing.
wow. Same here,
Can
same
you
here.
can you top that, Tom? Anything better than 5 weeks in Switzerland?
Wow. Well, I'm not sure, but one thing that really recalled me, I want to start my vacation from tomorrow. Yeah, which is a Saturday. Yeah, 5 weeks. Too good to be
Five
true.
Very
weeks.
Yeah, yeah,
very good,
indeed.
very good. All right,
Yeah,
Graham, show is yours. I'm looking forward
yeah,
to what you're going to show us with the containers.
yeah,
Thanks, Matt. Actually, I'm going to pass over to our very good friends, Tom Lu and
yeah,
Moose.
yeah.
They're going to take us through some amazing things with AIML. And just as they're coming online, I want to say a special thank you, and well done to the She Build stream, with Mai and May hosting, and guest Nadia Rehani. That was a fantastic stream to watch, going through Amazon Bedrock and making some really cute cat pictures. But
Oh,
over to you, Tom and Moose. Let's yeah, take it away.
yeah. Thank you. Sounds like the team already done the job for us. Thank you for that, and really welcome Moose to join our section today. And before we kicking off, like I do want to share that Moose is our ML, like is my mentor, like in my ML journey. I'm so glad that I can have her today. Now I want Moose. Thanks for coming here today. I do want to have you to do a intro, and on top of that, I look forward to you like sharing a fun fact about you that people may be interested in knowing more about you. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. Really appreciate it. So yeah, my name is Sarah van der Moosdijk, but everybody just calls me Moose. Dutch by origin, now living in Melbourne for the past 5 years, and I'm basically the AIML partner solutions architect, covering Australia, New Zealand. So our partners, the likes of GSIs, but really any consulting partners that we have in Australia, New Zealand, whenever they need help with AIML, that's pretty much where I step in.
Mm.
Um, Now, a fun fact. Let's see. I guess most people don't know yet, I suppose, that I fly airplanes in my free time. I got my pilot license earlier this year.
Wow.
So that's been a lot of fun.
Wow, that's so amazing. Okay. What's the longest distance you fly like from like
Not very long yet, because I'm still working on navigation, but
yeah,
I recently flew from Moorabbin over to Lilydale and then back to Moorabbin, and that was on my own. So that was,
yeah,
yeah, one of my first longer
yeah,
distance flights.
gotcha. Yeah, I think here is the benefit for the Amazonian working in Melbourne or Sydney. If they need to go from Melbourne to Sydney, maybe they can ask for your help then. Yeah.
Only if you're
Yeah.
willing to be stuck in a small airplane for maybe about 4 hours to get to Sydney
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
the 1 hour on a big jet.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. Now I look forward to have a bit of chat regarding the exciting stuff in AI ML domain now. And before that, maybe it's good to have your suggestion and I'll have your feedback. Also, what do you think about the biggest challenges for our customers to adopt like LLM or generative AI technology to power their application?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of major challenges. I'd say one major challenge I've seen customers face is just figuring out what to use this technology for. Like, where is it uh, good? What is it not suitable for? And what are the use cases within the business that actually have a good ROI? And also how to deploy these use cases in a way that's safe, that they can actually trust the output that comes from these models. So, yeah, definitely multiple challenges, but I'd say choosing the right use case, and then how to get the ROI and secure that use case is pretty much the main challenges I see.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree with you. Thanks for sharing the insight. Especially one thing you called out regarding on the trust and safety part. I, am I right that it's kind of part of the responsible AI, domain or so?
Absolutely, yeah. Responsible AI has been around forever, but the bigger our models get, the less we understand them, and the more sometimes their behavior can be a little bit unexpected, and so
Okay.
the more important responsible AI becomes, really.
Okay. So if that is the case, like, what do you think of the like just under these areas, what do you think about the common, challenge and what are the potential like a solution or like a best practices to tackle them? Yeah.
Hmm. Um, Yeah, it starts at defining your use case, right? The
Mm,
the first thing that you do when you define your use case is you have to consider what could happen, what could go wrong.
mm,
Don't just look at, I guess, what the use case can bring you, but also look at if something were to happen, if the model were to return something incorrect, or if the model were to return something inappropriate, what is the worst that can happen?
mm.
And you really
Okay.
need to plan that out ahead of time.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, now by knowing what, like, how do we know what, like, how do we know that, like, what is kind of happening and then tackle that challenge then? Like, what do you see it about the way we tackle that? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's once you understand, I guess, your use case and
Mm?
what could happen, at that point you can start thinking about what are the
Mm.
guardrails I could put in place to
Okay.
prevent anything bad from happening, right? And there's many,
Gotcha.
many different methods,
Mm.
and some are good for particular use cases. So, yeah,
Mm.
it's understanding and then seeing, okay, what can I
Mm.
actually do to mitigate?
Okay. Okay. Now I know that you prepare something to illustrate regarding on how to like how to kind of gut rail that part. And
Mhm.
what did you prepare today, like to help us understand and learn? Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a bit of a diagram here that I've created, which may look a little strange to people at first glance.
What is
But
it?
if
It looks like
so, it's the Swiss cheese model, right? It's layers of
Swiss
Swiss
cheese.
cheese.
Okay.
This model is really, really common in aviation, but also in other areas where, you know, um, sort of other dangerous industries.
Mm.
And so the idea is that every single layer of protection is a slice of Swiss cheese, and Swiss cheese has a lot of holes, right? So not there's no single layer of protection that will prevent everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every layer has its weaknesses, but by stacking up multiple layers one behind the other, you're protecting yourself, so you're reducing the chance that something bad will happen, that something can get through all the holes, that all the holes align, basically. So it's a bit of a weird model at first glance, but I actually think it's really helpful, to help you think about what are the layers of protection that I'm setting up, to protect
Mm.
myself and hopefully not have anything go through the holes.
Yeah, of course. No, no one does. And I haven't got my lunch. It looks very tasty on your
Sorry about
Swiss.
that.
Yes, no problem. And one thing I do want to call out that also like I see that listing layers, but in the meantime, um does it also require customer to understand their use case and make sure that they may make a decision on choose what layer they want to protect or something like that? Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. So like one of the layers you see in my diagram is human in the loop.
mm,
And there's some use cases where that is going to be really crucial, right? You might
mm,
have use cases where by law, a model cannot make the final decision, right? The final
okay.
decision has to be made by a human. And so then it makes
Mm,
all the sense in the world to include it. But human in the loop can also be a little bit expensive, right? Because
mm,
you're paying humans to look at the output and validate it. So there might also be use cases where maybe it's an unnecessary layer and you can get away with just having other protections in place. So yeah, that's why understanding your use case is so important because not every layer makes sense
mm.
for every use case.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for the code out. Yeah, and for this one, what example, like what kind of demo you prepare to illustrate the protection perspective? Yeah. Can you share
Yeah,
a
so
little bit more?
I wanted to show, I guess we've recently had Amazon Comprehend has released some new
Oh, okay.
features to
What?
help you put in a layer of protection. So that's what I wanted to look at.
Okay. Would you mind sharing a bit like what is Amazon Comprehend services for customer to understand?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so Amazon Comprehend is our text analysis service,
Mm,
right? So it takes text as an input, and
mm,
based on that, it can do many different things. Like it can
mm,
do detection and removal of PII, so personally identifiable information.
mm.
It can do entity detection, so that means it will pick up like dates and personal names or
Oh,
locations within your text.
yep.
Language detection, like it can do all sorts of stuff,
Yep.
all based on analyzing text.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, that sounds like very exciting NLP services. And um, would love to see a bit more to understand your demo. Like, what's the
Hmm.
purpose on this demo? So, like, could you help us understand a
Yeah.
bit? Yeah.
Um, so I'll just quickly show you. So basically, the two new features that Comprehend released, one was toxicity detection, and the other one is prompt safety classification. And
Mm,
both of these are really useful if you're doing anything with generative AI, right?
mm,
So the toxicity detection, it will look for things like hate speech or swear words or anything that would be considered violence or really any sort of toxic content in your text. And
mm,
then it will return a list of these labels. So it can
mm,
tell you, for example, if there's a lot of hate speech in your text,
mm.
then hate speech will get a very high score, right? So it
Oh,
returns a score for each one of these labels, and we can take a look
yeah.
at what the labels are. And the second one, the prompt safety classification, it's slightly different. It returns a binary safe or unsafe label.
Mm,
So
mm,
it will just tell you, your prompt is safe or it's unsafe, and this is the score that I give it.
mm,
And what's nice about that one is it looks for toxic content as well. But the other thing
mm,
it will do is it can label your prompt as unsafe if you're asking for medical information or
mm.
financial information or things that are quite, I guess, sensitive to give answers on that you want to be really really careful with. So it sort of adds on top of the toxicity detection, and it's a
Okay.
it's a binary label.
Oh, okay. Understand. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And is it like just be curious, like is but binary label, does it also reply like a probability or so like
Yeah,
numeric
it gives
value?
you a score as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can run it if
Okay.
you like, so you can actually see what the
Okay.
output is, right?
Okay, sounds good. And by the way, I may want to call
Mm,
out here, like for some of our audience, maybe you're not familiar with ML. Like this is a Jupyter Notebook environment. Basically, it's an interaction environment for data scientists to experiment also. But this one is for showing a demo. Yeah,
yeah.
let's move on.
Yeah. Cool. So I mean, the first thing you do is you just create, you connect to Comprehend, right? So using Bodo 3, the Python SDK for AWS. We're just going to connect to Comprehend and make sure that we can use it. Now, the toxicity detection I have here. So really, the API call is detect toxic content, right? So this is the API call that we're making. And then all we really have to do is put in our text. Now you can see that there's a language code as well. Right now, this feature only supports English. So English, you just need to leave it as is.
Gotcha.
So I've got two texts. I've got "You are my friend," which obviously is very unproblematic. And given that this is a live stream, I'm not going to put in anything super problematic. So what I came up with is the lions fought a bloody war against the hyenas. They hated each other, right? So it's not super unsafe, but it's slightly more unsafe than "You are my friend," right? So we'll put that through. And then this piece of code down here is really just printing it in a way that's nice for us to read, right? So if I run this, you can now see the results down here. So you can see it scores every text on profanity, hate speech, insult, graphic content, harassment or abuse, sexual violence or threat, and then a final overall toxicity score. And you can see that the first text got an overall toxicity score of 0.08. So it's really not toxic at all. The maximum being 1, I believe. And then the second one got a slightly higher toxicity score of 0.22.
Yeah, I see. Bear with me. I see there is a question from our audience.
Sure.
The question is that how does comprehend define something as toxic? Like that is a service like providing guidance or whether the text content is toxic or so. But how comprehend define that? Like, can you share a little bit more?
Yeah, so it's a pre-trained machine learning model, right? So it's basically just been given lots of examples of what, I guess, in general, the community decides is toxic. So anything that's considered, insulting to, race or particular gender, or pretty much anything that we would generally label as toxic is what this has been trained on, right? And same with anything that's very violent, profanity. So, in your case, maybe you have an application where you don't really care about profanity, right? Maybe it's an application where that's okay. In that case, if the profanity score is high, you can probably just ignore it. But you may still want to pick up on some of these other toxic traits.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thanks for answering that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. I look forward to seeing more on the prompt safety classification one. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just scroll down to that one. So this one's even easier. So really what it is, again, it's a pre-trained machine learning model. And in this case, it's a pre-trained classification model. So with Comprehend, you can train your own classification models to assign labels to text. And that's really what AWS has done here. They've just created their own classification model. And that's what this endpoint ARN is pointing to. So it's pointing to our proprietary prompt safety model, right? So I'm just asking it, give me financial advice on which stocks I should invest in. Now, again, there's nothing toxic about that, but it is a bit of a tricky question to ask, right? Like you can imagine, financial advice is quite a sensitive area. So if I run this one, it will tell me for unsafe prompt and safe prompt what the scores are. So in this case, it's a higher score for unsafe prompt, meaning we do consider it unsafe.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. That looks very interesting. Yeah, it certainly can be very useful for some of the use case. Yeah. Now I see the next one is about like combining with LLM. How these two like work together and what's the benefit?
Yeah. So obviously these two on their own aren't very useful. You usually want to do something with your text. So what I've done is in this cell down here, I've just deployed a Mistral 7 billion LLM, so large language model, and I've done that using SageMaker Jumpstart. So I've already done that previously because it does take a few minutes to start up. So that one's already up and running. And then I won't go through all of this code, don't worry, but
No problem.
you can see I've got a function to query my endpoint. So this sends my prompt to Mistral 7 billion model in the endpoint. But before I do that, I have methods which check for toxicity,
Mm,
right? So this will first put my prompt into comprehend,
mm,
check for toxicity, and if it finds toxicity above a threshold of 0.2, you can see my threshold up here,
mm-hmm,
right? So you can define that threshold however you like. But
mm-hmm.
in this case, if it finds toxicity above 0.2, it won't even send my prompt to my model. It will just tell me that it found toxic content and it's not willing to, work with that toxic content, basically. Um,
Okay.
and then similarly, if I go further down, I've got this
Mm,
prompt safety method, which does the same thing, but just uses the prompt safety classification to check if the prompt is safe, right?
mm,
So really what you do is you put in a prompt as a user. It first gets checked for toxicity. It then gets checked for
mm,
safety. If
mm,
both of those are okay, then it will get sent to the LLM. And then
mm.
the output from the LLM also gets checked for toxicity, right? So we're doing
Oh,
both the input and the output.
okay. Wow. That's like having the guardrail when before and like post interaction with LLM. Great. Yeah,
Yes.
I see that potential can be very useful in the sense that like your LLM may not have enough like domain related guardrail, and you can add in like protection like for your app.
Yeah. A lot of these LLMs are trained on data, gathered from the internet, and we all
Mm,
know what the internet can be like. So,
yeah,
there's a potential that some LLMs, depending on what they're trained on, could return something toxic. So it's
gotcha.
good to check for that as well.
Wow, awesome. Yeah, yeah. Look for like would like to see the result like uh,
Yeah,
when
let's uh,
calling the
let's run it.
call. Yeah.
So the first prompt I'm putting in is what is Amazon S3 and what can I use it for? I had to add keep your answer short because
Mm,
Mistral liked to give me a really long answer.
okay.
So if I run that one, hopefully, there we go. So you can see that
Yep.
it returned me the answer, right? So clearly that
Yep.
was not toxic. Clearly it
Mm,
was safe. That was totally fine.
yep.
Now, this prompt I actually ran previously because I tried to put in something very offensive, and I don't really want to show that in the live stream.
Okay.
So I've taken it away here with the stars, right? So you
Yeah.
can't see what I put in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I put in something with profanity basically, and it's telling
Yeah.
me please fix the prompt, avoid content that is toxic and is profanity, hate speech, insult, harassment, or
Yeah.
abuse or sexual, right?
Yeah.
So I had to run that one before, and then
Yeah.
I'll rerun the same one, the financial advice one.
Mm,
All right, so if I run that, it says, all right, sorry, I cannot respond if requesting personal or private information, generating
mm.
offensive or illegal content, or requesting advice on medical, legal, political, or financial subjects, right?
Wow, that's excellent. Yeah, I bear with me. I may ask a question to the audience if anyone want to share their prompt to test against the Moose program or the demo to verify against the trust and safety checking before like interaction with LM. Anyone interested in doing so? Like please just input your text
Nothing too
in the
offensive,
channel.
please.
Okay, yeah. We will do I will do a little
This
bit
is a live
guardrail on that.
stream. Let's keep it
Okay.
nice.
Okay. Yeah, I think that we always have nice audience and very polite, so it should be fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's always a challenge to demo these types of features because yeah,
Okay.
you don't want to do
Yeah.
something really offensive.
Okay. You know what? Like we have Graham, like several months ago, he read out something a little bit offensive to us, and we
Oh,
forgave him already. So I think
okay.
everyone's very nice here. Should be fine. Yeah. Okay. No problem. Maybe when the audience kind of thinking and preparing, let's
Hmm.
do um. Okay, there, I see a prompt. Maybe I just do it right away. Share it with you. Um, I I will paste it in our internal channel. Moose, can you see that?
No, I won't be able to because I only have one
Oh,
screen, so I can't move away
oh,
from this.
okay.
If you
The
can,
the the prompt I can read it out. What is the
okay,
best book ever written?
okay. What is the best book ever written?
Yeah.
Now I'm curious. I'm a huge fan of books.
Oh, okay.
Wonder what it
Me
will
too, but
think.
I don't read books. Like too lengthy for me. Okay. Wow.
Oh, okay. This is a subjective question, and people's opinions may vary. Oh, very good. Very good. Okay. Some of the
Okay.
highly regarded books ever written include To Kill a Mockingbird. I didn't like that one. I
Okay.
read it, wasn't a big fan. 1984 is pretty good. I liked it. Pride and Prejudice, I liked it as well. Great
Mm,
Gatsby's good. And The Catcher in the Rye, I've never read. Maybe I
okay.
need to.
Okay. Looks like we can advise our audience to do some shopping at Amazon in Black Friday for those books and start reading then. Yeah.
Yep.
Good books
Yep. Yep.
recommendation.
I'm
Thank
glad
you.
it says it's subjective because I certainly don't agree with its number one, but
Right.
the others are pretty
Okay.
good.
Okay. I may buy some. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, and we have audience providing feedback as well, saying that some of some of the books listed here actually they like as well, such as
Oh, good.
yeah, yeah. I think that's super awesome. Thank you. All right, Catch in the Rye. That's the one he mentioned. Yeah.
Okay.
Lastly, I do see you have a graph here. Like, can you share a bit on what this one tried to illustrate? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a visualization of what kind of pipeline you could put in place, right? So this is not exactly what I had in my demo, but it kind of shows you what kind of checks you could do in what order. So in this case, it will do the toxicity check first. If it finds toxicity, it just it will throw an error. It will say that it's refusing to even put that into the LLM.
Mm,
It then actually goes and does a PII check. Now, I didn't show that in my demo because it's slightly older functionality. It wasn't released recently,
mm,
but definitely worth doing, right? Maybe you don't want to put any credit card numbers or telephone numbers or anything like
mm.
that into an LLM.
Yep.
So they do that as well. And if they do find any PII data, they actually redact it. And then they go into the prompt safety check as well. So in this case, they actually do 3 checks
Mm,
before sending the text into an LLM to be answered. So this is
mm.
an example of a workflow you could use, but of course, it's completely up to you in what order
Oh,
you would do these things.
I see. And I think this kind of mapping to what we discussed earlier, based on your use case, and you may start building your protection pipeline like this format. And one thing I noticed that this graph is mapping with like LangChain, which is kind of
Yep.
open source framework with our comprehend services. I see that there was kind of integration package you customer can start trial. Yeah, sounds good.
Yes, correct. Yeah, LangChain integrates with Bedrock and with Comprehend and with
Yeah.
Kendra and with a bunch of other
Mm,
AWS services. So, if we do have any customers using it, which I know a lot of customers do,
mm.
it's easy to get started.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah. Um, Thanks for that. I think we're pretty good, like to like get across on this great topic and super important topic. And I lastly, I want to shout out that I learned that you are flying to Las Vegas for reInvent. What's that about? Can you
Yes.
share a bit? Yeah.
Um, yeah, so you actually all got a sneak peek of my reInvent talk because the Swiss cheese
Okay.
model I actually created for my
Yeah.
reInvent talk. So yeah, so I have a session on LLM ops, right? So how can we operationalize the use of LLMs and what are
Yeah.
things you need to consider?
Yeah.
And responsible AI is a big part of that. So yep, I've
Mm,
got a chalk talk at reInvent, so I'll be heading over to Las Vegas in
yeah.
about a week.
Well, super awesome. Like if our audience got a chance to fly today to attend our great event, do do shout out and tap maybe Moose shoulder to say hi, then look forward to
Yep.
catch up, something like that. Yeah.
For
Thank you
sure.
for
Yeah,
that.
I'd love to meet anyone.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having you today and really appreciate it. Now we're gonna move on to the next section. Thank you. Hey Graham.
Hey, Tom. Thanks. That was
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you. All right, I pass it to you and enjoy the next one. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. See you next time on the show. And thanks also to Moose for that amazing demo, including toxicity and secure guardrails of language you perhaps don't want passed through your large language model. Maya, our show producer, is in the background. He's got his finger poised over the bottom, over the button. Please bring back onto the show our other co-presenters, Matthew Platts, and guesting on today's show is Brendan Goff. Please join me.
Hey Graham, how are you?
Well,
After
thank
Hey,
you.
Graham. Hey, Brendan.
Apologies.
I want to know if Moose is actually flying into Vegas or if she's flying commercial. That's what I was stuck on. I'm gonna send her a message now and just find out. But that her presentation at re:Invent sounds super interesting around LLM ops and that Swiss cheese model.
Absolutely. I guess if she wears the right shirt, she might be able to sit in the front of the plane.
I'm just imagining her flying in, presenting, and just flying straight back out on her own little jet. That'll be perfect.
All right, I'll throw a feature release in for that, or a feature request.
Very good.
What's up for today? I've got some interesting things I want to talk about around containers. I was absolutely shocked, blown away a couple of weeks ago when I saw an announcement come through about Finch. It is a way to build containers with AWS that I'd never heard about before, and it just went GA.
Let's start
Random.
there. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Finch. So for those of you who've not heard of it before, which was me a couple of weeks ago, what is Finch? So it is an open source client for container development. It's very much like Docker. In fact, it's got a few of the same dependencies as Docker. It's built on open source components. So it's using Lima, it's using nerdctl, containerd, and BuildKit. Because it's built using containerd, it's got and nerdctl, it's got a very similar CLI feel to it as Docker. So if you're using Docker already, you can use the same Docker files, you can use the same build commands. It's almost a drop-in replacement, not quite exactly the same, and not all functionality is supported. And even though it's GA, it's currently only available on Mac OS. So if you're working on a Windows laptop or a Linux laptop, unfortunately, it's not something that you could pick up and use today. However, I'm using a Mac. So I can do something with it today, and I will be happy to demo something. So I am sharing a screen, and I'd love to just dive into a little bit of what you can do with Finch today. My skills with containers are a little bit basic, so I'm going to stick with the basic functionality, which is perfect because that is supported. So I've got my terminal window. I think that it's visible to everybody. So I'll just run a couple of commands and show you what I've got. So the first thing I've got is my Docker file. It's really simple. It's pulling the minimal Amazon Linux image. So it's like 180 meg, really small. Installing a package, copying across a file, which is my shell script, and then it has the single entry point, which is the run script. So moving over to my shell scripts, that's really small. It's just going to basically output some text to the screen, sleep a little bit, and then exit. So not a lot going on here, but just enough for us to do a bit of a hello world on the container. Building it's really straightforward. So if you want to build it, it's very similar to what you would see with a Docker build command. And I'm just going to, and I forgot to say build, didn't I? So unpacking that command, it's calling Finch. Build dot means it's building from the local directory, which picks up the Docker file. And then I'm going to call the resulting image demo. And I can see that by doing a Docker image ls, and it's not Docker, it's Finch image ls. I'll just clear that so it's at the top. You can see. So that's built my image, and it's available locally. At this point, if I wanted to, I could push this container up to ECR, which is the Elastic Container Repository. But for the moment, I'm just going to stay local and run the container. So once again, that's as simple as doing a Finch run and then the name of the container, which does the thing. Gives me a nice picture of a cow saying, "Hi, welcome to what's new in AWS with enterprise support." Similar to looking at the images, you can do a PS there to get all of the available containers there. Tearing it down is very similar commands as well, so pretty straightforward to get up and started. The install process was a breeze. There is a brew cask available to install it on the Mac. It just worked.
That's awesome, Graham. If I don't know if this is a trick question, but if you had Docker Desktop installed, could you run that demo?
So no, you couldn't call Finch from Docker, but what you could do is
Could you run
if I had pushed this image up to ECR, you could pull that image down.
So I could pull that on my Linux box, run it through Containerd and basically launch it through Docker.
Absolutely. You can pull it down onto a Linux box or a Windows box and run it the same way as you would any other Docker-based container. Just because it's built using Finch doesn't mean you can't use it from Docker. And also, it's compatible with running on Amazon EC2 or Fargate as a container image.
Got it. I've never quite, just thinking out loud here, I've never quite thought about the different developer experience of building and publishing and creating containers. I've always done it in my own ecosystem, and that's where it's always sat. But I can imagine, if I had to change operating systems, it all becomes a little bit different. And having that single unified way would absolutely help.
Absolutely. The other thing that is supported already is multi-architecture support. So if you wanted to build for Graviton instances, then that's supported. You can pull the base image down. The virtual machine running in the background is able to support the architecture. You can build it on a Mac and then push it up to ECR and run it on Graviton instances. Same for ARM. You can build in whichever architecture is currently supported.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's a pretty good update in the chat too. Just alias Docker to Finch, just for a little bit of adventure, right?
They don't recommend doing that at this stage, mainly because not all of the CLI commands are supported that are available in the underlying framework. But it would be an adventure.
If you haven't got enough things to break, just do that and then see what happens.
Yeah, you'd have to do a lot of deep dives on the logs if things don't work straight away.
Very good. Did you have anything else, Graham, in the wonderful world of containers that you wanted to touch on outside of Finch?
You know what? That's pretty much exhausted my current capability with containers. It's been a long time. I did want to share, though, because, as I say, it's been a long time since I worked with containers in AWS, and a few things were stumbling blocks for me as I pulled this through. One of them is that Yum is no longer the default package manager with Amazon Linux. So 2023 version of Amazon Linux uses DNF instead of Yum. So that caught me. Took me a while to get past that one when I was building the Docker file. Just getting up to speed with all of the latest commands was a while.
I'm not quite sure if I should say this out loud, but I'm getting close to it. I'm still back on the apt-get days and aptitude, and even going into... I haven't even Googled DNF yet, and I think I should, because there's a lot of tooling changes that are happening, and I think it's all pretty exciting. But maybe I'm just showing my age.
Yeah, I don't like to switch to context switch, I should say, between Fedora and Debian distributions, because it really does my head in all the different commands and where everything's located. But yeah.
No, and I haven't. All right, you are exhausted, but I'm energized. I need to have a bit of a play. I need to see what this thing's all about because it looks pretty cool.
Nice. We've got a question in chat. How does Finch compare to Podman? I will admit I haven't used Podman before, so I won't be able to comment on that one. But it's something that I think I should be checking out, because having choice is great. You know, being able to pick and choose the right tool for the job is fantastic. Being a Mac user, I'm actually pretty happy being able to use Finch. Podman might be something that's, I'd need more information to know what it's suitable for. It looks like it supports Mac as well as Linux and Windows, which is great.
Yeah, maybe we can have a bit of a deep dive on that on a future stream.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I have some changes here around database and compute. So how about we go through them just before we close off the show? There's some really interesting ones that I've called out this week. I'm just looking at my notes. Where are we? So just right at the top here. So RDS now supports dedicated log volumes, which I thought was pretty cool. So if you take a bit of a step back, just a bit of a reminder, your databases ultimately run on two things, a data volume and a transaction volume, which is your transaction log. So RDS now has the ability to specify that you want a dedicated log volume, which is going to then separate your data from your transactions and give you a bit of a speed boost as well, because both those data files aren't going to be competing for the actual same underlying storage.
Interesting. And what were people using before this? Is this something they'd used an instance store for before, or was this also just part of the general storage that was available to the RDS instances?
Yeah, it's a good question, Graham. In the wonderful world of scaling databases, which is very complex, and there's many different options, but right at the bottom, if you were to start up an RDS instance, what you'd find is your transaction logs and your data volumes were sharing the same disk. So as you then scale up and up and up and up, now you have the ability to separate those two and give yourself a bit more of customization and flexibility around your storage choice.
Yeah, nice.
While we're on RDS, I don't know whether you gents have had a chance to use optimized writes before, by any chance. Brendan, have you used RDS optimized writes?
I haven't. I've definitely seen the releases and let my customers know to give it a try.
Yep.
Just on the dedicated log volume, back in the day of playing with 10 pre-AWS, was definitely something we used to do, split a temp DB, put that somewhere, a different array for data and a different array for logs. It's good to actually see that available as a configurable option.
I definitely remember the days of multiple LUNs going to your data, multiple flash storage going first to your transaction logs, and managing the latency appropriately. So thank you for that reminder, or blast from the past. So optimized writes. It's part of our Nitro system, but ultimately with Nitro, we have the ability to write 16K pages and to do it directly and do it reliably. So what that actually means is in the wonderful world of RDS, there's a transaction called a double write buffer. So when you actually have the transaction occurring, it writes it twice. With optimized writes, because of Nitro, we don't need to do the double write, which is ultimately improving performance by a factor of 2. We released optimized writes. I haven't got the date in front of me, but it was fairly recently, and it was earlier this year, I believe. But what we've gone ahead and released just recently is now, when you are using optimized writes, you have the ability now to also use blue-green deployments in your RDS deployment. So we had customers that were loving the use of optimized writes, but they also wanted to look at their deployment architectures and look at more efficient ways that they could look at pushing out upgrades and features into their database engine. So now with blue-green being available, they can keep the performance of optimized writes and start looking at blue-green deployments as well.
We've got a question on chat about when the dedicated log volume functionality is coming to MS SQL, and I don't see it in the launch announcement. Is this something that has been updated since the launch?
I don't believe it's on MS SQL, so it supports Postgres, MySQL, and MariaDB now. I can have a bit of a sticky beak, and maybe in next month's stream, we can have a look at and see when if we're able to share that around when SQL Server is coming.
Fortunately, next week, it is next week, isn't it? reInvent is coming up, and that's typically when a lot of these things take place. So given that this one landed just before reInvent, I think there might be some updates in the works. I know the service teams, they love to get some of the updates that weren't quite flagged to be presented at reInvent pushed in just in front of reInvent, so they still get them out. So there might be some more coming either at reInvent or just after.
Awesome. But yeah, definitely watch this space. I would expect very similar customization into other database engines as well.
Yeah, so Optimized Writes was released on the 27th of November last year. Started with MySQL 8, and reading the documentation, there are certain instance types you do need to use as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, the ones that support Nitro, I would say.
That's right. All right, my favorite release for this month. I'm not going to say it's a quick or an easy one, but it's a pretty substantial one, to be honest. Lambda now supports IPv6 for outbound, which is exciting for me. Not very much by the least the fact that I get easily excited, but you might recall earlier in 2021, we actually released IPv6 support for inbound Lambda. So that gave us and our customers and the ability to actually publish public IPv6 endpoints. And that was great. But it kind of came with a catch. The catch was if you wanted to use it, you basically needed to do some IPv4 to IPv6 translation for your existing Lambdas. So now we've got the ability to connect outbound IPv6. Obviously, you're going to need to be on dual stack VPCs. So if you're on IPv4 only, have a look at your network architecture to move across to dual stack. But yeah, now we've got the ability both to receive and to actually call IPv6 Lambdas.
I mean, this is fantastic. It's going to mean that if you've got Lambda VPC requirements, you can now do that at scale.
That's right.
Yeah, use the egress only internet gateway options. And I guess every time a service adds more IPv6 support, we approach that exit date closer and closer to being able to move away from IPv4.
I'm sure we look forward to that exact day, Graham.
Yeah, especially with the changes coming in terms of costs associated with IPv4 addresses.
Yeah, that's right. Just a quick reminder about that one. So we are going to start charging. I haven't got the exact notes in front of me, but there's going to be an additional cost to have IPv4 addresses. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. I don't know the date that comes in either, but it is coming.
1st of Feb.
1st of Feb.
Yep.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a few things that you can do to see what your scope is in terms of the cost. I don't believe it's a big cost per IP, but if you've got large subnets or large VPCs, you might want to consider migrating across some of those into non-public address space, if possible.
Got it. Very good. Moving on, moving into Lambda now. So for devs using the SAM CLI, which is our AWS serverless application model, to author their serverless applications, we've now created the ability for Lambda to have test events. So super handy, especially, so what it is, it's basically a JSON object that's mimicking the structure of our AWS services within the actual JSON packet, and that's going to allow devs to collaborate, and to streamline some of their testing workflows. To be able to specify that, we've got this type of application, and this is a test event going through that application and through all the different Lambdas that might be supporting that workflow.
Yeah, that's nice. I think SAM CLI is it's a nice way to develop serverless applications, to be able to test as well within the same CLI and not have to either go into the console or send a test event outside of the CLI. Means you can stay within that wrapper and
That's right.
and take advantage of the simplicity that gives.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got two more quick fire ones to go. For EC2 now supports AMIs moving to a disabled state. Pretty super simple, very practical, and also a nice layer of security as well. If you recall, just last month, we were talking about the ability now to make AMIs private. And we've always had the ability to share AMIs between selected accounts privately as well. So this is obviously adding a nice layer around being able to say, look, we don't need this AMI anymore. It's old, it's unpatched. We don't want to use it, and then put that into a state where it's not going to be launched in your environment or any other shared accounts.
Nice. Yeah, being able to keep something but not have it accessible anymore is a great way to back something and archive it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Last but not least, a nice simple one, but I love this one, having dealt with multiple storage incidents in the past where you just needed information to tell you exactly what was broken and exactly what was going on. But there's a couple of additional CloudWatch metrics that we really recommend everyone to take a look at. We've got the ability now inside EC2 in your CloudWatch metrics to be able to monitor the attachment of your EBS volumes. So it's called attached EBS status check. You can obviously add that as a CloudWatch alarm, and it's going to tell you basically if your volume is attached or not attached at a given point in time. So before that, it could have been a little bit tricky. You might have had an operating system volume notification or something saying that that volume is no longer accessible or is experiencing issues, but you weren't quite sure Is that because the underlying disk is there, or because it's something else that's occurring? So this is going to get you pretty quickly to an understanding of what's actually happening at the storage layer.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here, Matt, and let everybody on the call know that my ability with networking in general is actually quite limited. I don't actually know how you can have an EBS volume attached to an EC2 instance, but that EBS volume not able to be able to use I/O, right? How is that a thing? How is that? How is it possible to have an EBS volume attached and then not I/O? Is that like a network ACL that's in place that's blocking the traffic, or is there a security group restriction here, or is it something that's on the machine host itself that's blocking I/O for the EBS volume?
Not quite in the lens that you're thinking, Graham. Think about it potentially more in a physical storage sublayer sense. So think about it as if the volume itself was corrupted and then actively dismounted from the client that was mounting it.
So conceptually, I could think of this like the EC2 status checks.
Very much so. Yeah. Obviously, it's not something that we want. Work backwards from your storage availability and your storage architecture in relation to availability and performance. But everything's going to fail all the time. We know that from Werner. So it's really just a matter of working backwards from that. Your storage at some point will fail. The disk will fail, and this is going to tell you exactly that it has failed and it's no longer attached into your operating system.
Oh, great! Thanks for that. That makes that much easier to understand.
Yeah. That's it for this month. That was a lot to get through. Thank you so much, gents, for joining us.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Brendan.
Big shout out again to Tom and to Sarah Moose as well for joining us on the show.